All right, today we're diving into a really sharp critique of a pretty controversial political proposal for the Horn of Africa. But here's the twist. We're going to look at it through a cold, hard lens of power politics, a theory that basically says ideals and good intentions don't run the world, survival does.
You know, the analysis we're exploring today kicks off with this really powerful idea that some beliefs, these so-called mental bondages, can be way, way harder to break than any physical constraint. Just keep that phrase in your back pocket, because it's going to be the key to understanding this entire argument.
And at the center of it all is this one specific proposal. The critique we're examining sees this plan as the perfect example of that very mental bondage. So, what exactly is this plan? And more importantly, why is it being called a dangerous fantasy?
Okay, let's get right into it. First things first, what is the actual proposal that's causing all this debate?
So here's the pitch, and it is a big one. It calls for this unified front with Eritrea at the helm to basically liberate the entire Horn of Africa. The core belief here is that a shared history and a shared vision should be what binds nations together, not that cynical old game of no permanent friends, only permanent interests. In fact, it dismisses that whole idea as just a Western plot.
Now, the counter-argument we're going to explore isn't just a simple, hey, I disagree. No. It brings in a completely different and, frankly, a much colder way of looking at how the world actually works.
And this is the tool used to take that proposal apart. It's called structural realism. And what it says is, basically, forget about hopes, forget about ideals, forget about good intentions. What really drives a country's actions is its raw power and its place in an international system where there is no global 911 to call for help. So it really boils down to three simple, kind of brutal ideas. 1. The world is anarchic. There's no higher authority. 2. Because of that, it's a self-help system. Every nation has to rely on its own strength to survive. And 3, and this is the big one, national interest is king. A country's survival comes before everything else. Friends, morals, ideology, you name it.
And the argument is, this isn't just some dusty old academic theory. No, this is the hard reality of how the world has always worked. And there are some pretty powerful examples from history to back it up.
I mean, just look at World War II. You had the communist Soviet Union and the capitalist West. These guys were mortal ideological enemies. They hated everything the other stood for. But when they were faced with an even greater threat, what happened? All those deep-seated beliefs went right out the window and they formed an alliance. Why? Because survival trumped ideology.
And this sentiment from FDR just says it all, doesn't it? I would work with the devil himself to save my country. That right there is the very heart of realism. You do what you have to do to survive.
Or take communist China. They had this famous line from Deng Xiaoping. It doesn't matter if a cat is black or white, so long as it catches mice. What he meant was, this rigid communist ideology isn't delivering, so we'll set it aside to partner with our so-called enemy, the capitalist U.S. Why? Because it delivered economic growth. It caught the mice. The results mattered more than the doctrine.
And you see this pattern of real politics based on cold, hard facts rather than ideals, absolutely everywhere today. The U.S. and Vietnam, bitter enemies, now strategic partners. South Korea and Japan, with all their historical baggage, they're cooperating to counter shared threats. And the Middle East? Wow, that's the ultimate example. You see these dizzying alliances that cut right across religious and cultural lines, all driven by calculated self-interest.
Okay, so with this cold, unsentimental framework of realism in our heads, let's circle back to that original proposal for the Horn of Africa. How does it hold up when you look at it through this particular lens?
And this brings us to the real central challenge of this whole critique. See, a realist doesn't ask if Eritrea deserves to lead because of its history. They ask a much simpler, much more brutal question. Does it actually have the power to lead?
Now, when a realist talks about power, they're talking about tangible things you can measure. A modern military, a strong economy, diplomatic clout. And the assessment in our source text is, well, it's stark. The argument is that without these core instruments of power, a nation simply cannot lead. It can't force or even inspire other countries to follow its vision, no matter how noble that vision might be.
This leads to a very pointed question, and it's centered on this number, 30. After 30 years, has Eritrea become the kind of success story that other nations would naturally want to follow? An economic powerhouse? A diplomatic heavyweight? Is it the Singapore of the Horn of Africa?
And as evidence, the critique points to one powerful moment. When that border with Ethiopia briefly opened, the flood of people was compared to East Germans pouring into the West when the Berlin Wall fell. The suggestion is pretty clear. This looked like a population voting with its feet, seeking opportunity elsewhere. Not exactly the sign of a people ready to lead a regional liberation.
So, if the realist analysis suggests this plan is totally unworkable, why on earth would someone propose it in the first place? And this is where we come full circle, right back to where we started, that idea of mental bondage.
From this perspective, the proposal isn't just a simple mistake in strategy. It's seen as a symptom of a belief system that's so deeply attached to the glories of the past that it's become completely detached from the realities of the present. It's that mental bondage to a heroic narrative, ignoring the facts on the ground.
But why are these worldviews so hard to shake? The analysis brings up this former KGB agent Yuri Bezmenov, who explained that trying to change someone's core worldview isn't a logical debate. It's a traumatic process. It's like turning their whole world upside down, because you're not just challenging their facts, you're challenging their very identity.
And the solution that comes from this line of thinking is, honestly, pretty stark. It suggests that it's almost impossible to change a mind that's already been programmed with a certain ideology. So what's the only path forward? You focus on the new generation. You have to build a new worldview, grounded in reality, from the ground up.
And this is where it all lands. The hope for the future isn't placed on changing old minds, but on the potential of young ones. With more access to information than any generation in history, can they learn from the unsentimental lessons of the past? Can they analyze things with clear eyes and forge a different, more pragmatic path forward? That is the final, crucial question we're left with.